They met on a night that smelled like rain and fresh lies. Monroe City shimmered that evening, its skyline a confession in lights. At the center of it all, on the corner of Cypress and Fairview, stood a rooftop bar called the Meridian. It was the kind of place where people went to forget themselves. And that was exactly why he was there. He called himself Ethan Hale, charismatic, well-dressed, the kind of man whose voice carried the weight of practiced honesty. He said he was a venture consultant, that he'd just moved to the city to oversee a renewable tech deal. Nobody asked for details. He always offered just enough to sound real. He had a talent for that. Just enough truth to make the lies feel polite. Across the room that night was Lauren Bennett, a marketing executive who had just closed a brutal quarter and was celebrating survival with friends. When their eyes met, she said later, it felt like déjà vu. The city moved around them, but he looked at her like she was the only solid thing in the room. She'd been single for 2 years, skeptical, but Ethan had a way of making disbelief sound cynical. By midnight, she was laughing again. By morning, she was waiting for his text. It came at 8:02 a.m. Last night felt familiar. Coffee? For the next few weeks, they were inseparable. Photos from that time show sunsets, wine glasses, dinners in uptown restaurants. But if you look closer, like Vega would months later, you'd see something off. A shadow always falling just short of full light. Ethan never talked about family. He never introduced friends. Every detail was curated, prepped, and placed like an exhibit. Lauren thought it was mystery. It was really strategy. He charmed her mother over brunch. He left small notes in her kitchen, little things like, "You deserve soft mornings." The kind of gestures that feel authentic because no one ever suspects a sociopath can write poetry. And yet, behind every word, every touch, there was calculation. Ethan wasn't building love. He was building cover. By the 3rd month, he'd moved into her apartment. Temporary, he said. My lease got tangled up. She didn't ask for proof. When you love someone, your questions shrink. Monroe City kept raining that spring, the kind of endless drizzle that makes everything look cinematic. On the surface, they were perfect. But sometimes the light of a street lamp catches more than it should. One night, as Lauren scrolled through old photos on his phone, a picture flashed, a candid image of a woman holding his arm, laughing in the same restaurant where he'd taken her 2 weeks ago. The timestamp was from 3 nights before they met. She froze. He smiled. That was my sister, he said without blinking. You know how family can be. The lie slid through her like honey. But it didn't end there. A few weeks later, while cleaning out drawers, she found 2 driver's licenses. One read Ethan Hale, the other, Michael Avery. When she asked, he laughed again, casually. One's fake, he said. Identity theft protection thing. Weird online security program. He kissed her forehead. She almost believed him again. Almost. What no one knew. Not Lauren. Not her friends. Not the doorman who greeted them every night. Was that Ethan Hale didn't exist? He'd been Michael Avery in Chicago. Ryan Hale in Atlanta. Ethan Cole in Miami. 3 identities. Same man, same pattern, same outcome. A trail of emotionally shattered women and drained bank accounts. But Monroe City was different. Here. His past started catching up faster than he could. Rename it. It started with a phone call. Lauren's. Co-worker trying to verify a background. Check for Ethan's investment firm. The woman on the other end had never heard of him. Lauren's heart cracked quietly, like ice under heat. She didn't confront him right away. She started collecting pieces instead. Screenshots, emails, documents. When she finally brought them to the police, the first person to read her report was Detective Marlon Vega. Vega had seen liars before, but this one was different. He'd built his life like a stage set, flawless from the front, hollow behind. Vega's first instinct wasn't anger. It was curiosity. He knew people lied to survive. But this wasn't survival, this was sport. He started digging. The deeper he went, the worse it got. 3 states, 5 aliases, each tied to a woman. Each account drained emotionally and financially. The FBI had flagged his name years ago, but he was a ghost. Every 6 months, he'd vanish, change his face with a beard or haircut. adopt a new persona, and start again. Still, Vega wasn't the kind of man who believed in ghosts. He believed in patterns. Through security footage, he traced Ethan's movements across Monroe City, gym memberships, cafe receipts, hotel stays. The man lived between lies, never staying still long enough to cast a real shadow. But on May 14th, Vega found something that didn't fit the pattern. A Monroe general, hospital record, and ER visit filed under Ethan Hale, minor hand laceration. The emergency contact was Lauren Bennett, meaning he had started to let the mask slip, and people like him never did that without a reason. Lauren said he'd been distracted that week, checking his phone constantly, pacing at night. She thought it was work stress. In reality, someone had found him, another woman. From his last city, she'd messaged Lauren on social media. The message read, "If you're with Ethan Hale, get out." 2 days later, that woman disappeared. By then, Vega had pieced together enough to understand Ethan's lies weren't about money anymore. They were about control. Each identity was a chapter of ownership. He didn't love these women. He collected them. And when one tried to leave, she didn't just vanish from his life. She vanished from everywhere. Vega brought the case to Captain Reyes, who warned him the suspect was careful, too careful. "He's been doing this for years, Marlon," Reyes said. "If we move too early, he'll ghost again." But Vega wasn't patient anymore. There was a pattern of escalation, and Monroe City was about to be next on his list of broken lives. On May 18th, Lauren stopped answering calls. Her building security camera caught Ethan entering at 10:41 p.m. He left at 11:07. No one saw her again. The next morning, a neighbor heard her alarm blaring and called 911. The door was locked from the inside. The only open window led to the fire escape, and on the kitchen counter lay a note in Ethan's handwriting. "You shouldn't have looked for who I was." That was when Vega realized he wasn't chasing a con artist anymore. He was chasing a man who lied so deeply, he no longer knew which version of himself could still kill. The morning Lauren Bennett vanished, the rain didn't stop. It came down steady and silver, washing the city like it was trying to erase what happened. Monroe City Police sealed off the apartment within an hour. Captain Reyes stood in the doorway, coat dripping, watching Vega move through the rooms with a silence that felt like respect. A purse still on the counter. 2 coffee cups in the sink. No sign of forced entry. Vega didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Everyone in that room could feel it. This wasn't a breakup. This was a burial wrapped in a lie. Ava Quinn was the first to notice the footprint on the balcony rail. "Size 10, she murmured. "Male, expensive sole. Matches the tread from the security footage." She was right. Vega had already memorized it from weeks of surveillance footage. The same pattern, the same stride, the same ghost, walking through every city under a different name. By nightfall, they had an APB out on Ethan Hale, a.k.a. Michael Avery, a.k.a. Ryan Hale. But he was already gone. What he didn't realize was that Vega wasn't chasing where he went. He was tracing who he'd been. Over the next 48 hours, Vega reconstructed his last 3 months in the city. Hotel receipts, ATM withdrawals, car rentals, each a breadcrumb of narcissism. He loved to watch himself move, leaving just enough evidence to admire the trail, and through it all, a pattern emerged. A single cafe on Cypress Avenue. Same order, same seat, every Thursday morning. When Vega and Ava arrived there, the barista remembered him instantly. Polite guy, paid in cash. Always tipped in tens. Talked about building something new here. Vega's mind cataloged every detail, every timeline. But then the barista hesitated. "There was a woman," she said. "She came here once with him. I thought they were together, but she didn't seem happy." Vega leaned forward. "Describe her." Tall, brown hair. Looked tired. Kept glancing at the door. That matched the last confirmed image of Melissa Grant, the woman who had warned Lauren and then vanished. That's when it clicked. The man wasn't running. He was cleaning up. Every lie had an ending. And he was erasing the witnesses to keep the narrative clean. But he'd made one mistake. Monroe City had cameras everywhere. At 2:37 a.m. the next morning, a traffic cam caught a black sedan heading north on I-9, registered to Lauren Bennett, but driven by a man. 3 hours later, Vega found the car abandoned near an overpass, engine cold. Rain still pooling in the seats. Inside, a phone, a torn photo, and a half-burned note. The phone was Lauren's. The last text sent at 10:45 p.m. "We need to talk. I know who you are." The note was his. The fire had eaten most of it, but Vega could read what remained. "It wasn't supposed to be you." Reyes read it twice. "That means she confronted him," he said. Vega shook his head. "No, it means she wasn't the target." Ava turned to him. "Then who was?" Vega didn't answer. He was already looking at the photo. It showed Ethan, Michael, Ryan, whatever his name was, standing beside another woman. Older, confident, familiar, stamped on the back. Monroe Bank Trust Gala, March 10th. The date lined up with Lauren's first week with him. That's when Vega realized the lies started long before Lauren, and the person behind them wasn't just a victim. She was part of it. Her name was Dr. Elise Harrow, a psychologist who had worked in behavioral profiling. 5 years earlier, she'd been the lead expert in a fraud case against a man named Michael Avery. He'd disappeared before sentencing. Elise had lost her license after testifying, accused of bias and manipulation, and now, here he was again, in her city, living under another name. Vega put it together in seconds. He wasn't here for Lauren, he was here for Elise. When they reached her address in the Upper District, the house was dark, no response to knocks. The rain fell harder, turning the lawn into glass. Vega forced the door open. The smell hit first, metallic, quiet, final. Elise was on the floor near the fireplace, her body cold, a crimson bloom spreading across the carpet. In her hand, a small flash drive. Next to her, a note, one line. "I told you he'd come back." Ava crouched beside the body, eyes glassy. "He didn't just lie," she said softly. "He made his lies come true." Vega didn't speak. He just stared at the drive. Back at headquarters, the contents of that drive turned the investigation inside out. Dozens of files. Psychological reports. Case notes, all about one patient, Michael Avery. But the last entry wasn't written by Elise. It was recorded. Audio. Time-stamped 2 nights before her death. Vega pressed play. The voice that filled the room was hers. Calm. Brittle, professional. He told me he stopped changing names. Said he finally found peace. But I know his tone. The self-control. The detachment. He doesn't stop. He only resets. If he ever finds me again, it's because he wants me to see the ending. Reyes shut it off. The silence that followed was heavy, surgical. Vega leaned back. "She knew him better than anyone," he said. "And she tried to warn us." Reyes stared at the floor. "So where is he now?" Vega looked at the time on the file. 11:04 p.m. Elise died between 11:10 and 11:20, meaning he'd been in the house while she recorded it. The hunt turned into obsession. For days, Vega didn't go home. He tracked bank withdrawals, hacked hotel bookings, monitored highway cameras. Ava begged him to rest. He didn't. He couldn't. Because for Vega, this wasn't about catching a liar anymore. It was about understanding one. When the call came from the Harbor Authority, it was already too late. A fisherman had found a body floating near Pier 9 Mail. Mid-30s, wearing a black jacket and cufflinks engraved with the initials EH. The ID in his pocket read Ethan Hale. The city exhaled. Case closed. But Vega didn't buy it. The autopsy showed blood loss and blunt trauma, but no water in the lungs. He'd been dead before he hit the river, and more importantly, the fingerprints didn't match any known database. Reyes said it was over. Vega called it what it was: performance. Every con ends with applause, and what's a better ending than dying in someone else's name? Weeks passed. Monroe City moved on. Lauren Bennett was never found. Elise Harrow was buried with quiet dignity, and Vega, he kept her file in his drawer. Not because of guilt, but because he knew how these stories end. They don't. One night, months later, Ava Quinn was locking up when she noticed an envelope on Vega's desk. No postage. No fingerprints, just a note, typed out short. You can stop looking. You already know my name. Taped to it. One cufflink. The twin to the one found on the body. That night, Vega walked out into the rain. The city hummed around him. Neon, wet, endless. Every lie in Monroe City had a pattern. And for the first time, he wondered if he'd just met the one that learned to breathe. The case remains open. Lauren Bennett's body was never recovered. Michael Avery's remains were never confirmed. And to this day, the Monroe City Museum hosts a gala every spring. Somewhere among the crowd, a man raises a glass, smiles at a stranger, and says, "Have we met?"